Svalbard is an archipelago belonging to Norway consisting of 4 large islands and other islets in the Arctic Ocean, north of continental Europe and halfway between the Norwegian coast and the North Pole and between Greenland and the uninhabited Russian archipelago called Franz Josef Land, north of Siberia. Being north of the Arctic Circle, it has a long polar night in winter from October to February and in summer the midnight sun from April to August. This geographical situation, together with the North Atlantic Current, condition the cold climate of the area. Thus, 60% of the surface of Svalbard is covered by glaciers. The milder temperatures of summer cause the snow to melt in the lower parts and allow the existence of flora and fauna adapted to a tundra habitat. The point of arrival in Svalbard, whether by plane or ship, is on the largest island, Spitsbergen, in the only permanently inhabited area that is not military or exclusively scientific or mining, which is the town of Longyearbyen. Longyearbyen is in fact the northernmost inhabited civilian center on the planet, has a population of over 2,000 inhabitants and is located at a latitude of 78 degrees north. It was founded in 1906 as a mining settlement and is named after one of its founders. Currently, a coal mine still exists, but most of its inhabitants live from tourism, commerce, and is also home to a university center specializing in the study of the Arctic that welcomes students from all over the world. Due to the harsh climate, the flora and fauna of Svalbard are not very numerous. There are no trees or shrubs, nor are there amphibians or reptiles. There are not many large insects, 20 species of bees, 2 groups of wasps and 2 species of moths. The rest, up to a total of 250 species, are small insects, mites and tardigrades. There are a few species of mammals on land. Reindeer are the most numerous. There are also Arctic foxes and polar bears among others and 2 more species, introduced by man, a mole and the snow hare. The birds are the most numerous animals group. Up to 241 species have been recorded, many of which are sightings of wandering birds. Of the more common birds, up to 45 species breed in Svalbard. Mostly seabirds, ducks, geese, and waders. The brant, called Brent goose in Europe, is a small dark goose that occurs throughout much of the northern hemisphere. In contrast to the other goose species, brant are characterized by their extensive use of native coastal habitats outside the breeding season. The black guillemot is a medium-sized alcid that is easily distinguished from other guillemots, genus Cephas, by the large white patch on its wings that contrasts with the rest of its body, which is completely black, like its bill, and by its red legs. It also differs from other alcids in that it lays 2 eggs instead of 1 and in that it prefers coastal waters to the open ocean, foraging for fish and invertebrates on or near the bottom in shallow water. Black guillemot breeds on rocky islands and coastal cliffs and has a circumpolar distribution. The red-throated loon is the smallest member of the Govidae family. In winter it has a white plumage below and dark gray above, but in summer it shows a distinctive chestnut spot on the front of its neck, and on the back of its neck it has a black and white stripe that ends up forming 2 half-collars. The beak and legs are gray and are set far back, which makes it difficult to walk on dry land. The red-throated loon feeds on small fish, mollusks, and crustaceans. During the breeding period it emits a characteristic cacophonous cry. It breeds in small Arctic and boreal lakes and always places the nest very close to the water. Due to the difficulties of walking mentioned above, the clutches are 1 to 3 eggs that the female preferably incubates for 24 to 29 days. Since they begin incubating with the laying of the first egg, the chicks are born in stages, and if food is scarce, the large chick monopolizes most of it, causing the death of its younger sibling or siblings by starvation. The pink-footed goose, like other similar species, are large birds that belong to the Anatidae family, smaller than swans and with a shorter neck. They have moderately long legs and are located quite in the center of the body, which makes them good walkers, with the ability to run. They develop a mutual display behavior before copulation and are monogamous, living in pairs throughout the year. However, unlike other monogamous animals, they are territorial only during the breeding season. The pink-footed goose, like all geese, is herbivorous. The population in Svalbard is estimated to exceed 10,000 breeding pairs. The barnacle goose is small black, gray, and white goose, which in the middle of the last century had only 3 breeding colonies, one in Greenland, the other in Svalbard and the third along the Russian coast of the Barents Sea, and which had decreased its population so much that it was considered endangered, has now disappeared. The causes that brought it to the brink of extinction, hunting, egg collection, and other human activities, has experienced an extraordinary recovery, not only in its traditional breeding areas. In Svalbard the population went from only 1,350 individuals to more than 40,000 currently, but has also spread south, creating new populations in Sweden, the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Estonia, Belgium and Finland, around the coasts of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. The barnacle goose looks for to breed, steep and inaccessible places but close to low-lying feeding areas where the chicks, when they are 3 days old, have to jump to the ground to feed, since like the rest of the geese, they are not fed by their parents. When falling, some of the lice die from the impact and are mainly food for the Arctic fox. Its main wintering areas are in the British Isles and the Netherlands. The red-necked phalarope is a small wading bird that has the particularity of wintering at sea, thus taking advantage of its swimming abilities, and also presents another distinctive feature. The males are responsible for incubating the eggs, and for this reason they have less striking and more cryptic plumage than the females. Another particularity of this bird is that when it searches for food in small, shallow, calm pools of water, it often swims in closed circles in order to create a whirlpool that forces the small aquatic animals it catches at high speed to rise to the surface. Its breeding area is distributed in circumpolar and near latitudes, but in Svalbard its presence is scarce. The common eider, the largest duck in the northern hemisphere, is more closely tied to marine habitats than any other sea duck. It generally inhabits Arctic and subarctic coastal marine habitats and has a circumpolar distribution. Its tendency to nest in large colonies on marine islands and to form large aggregations in inshore coastal areas during non-breeding season makes this species truly marine in all aspects of his life history. Although in winter a portion of the population migrates south to the Atlantic coasts of North America and Western Europe, many populations remain as far north as open water persists in winter, both with openings to the water between sea ice and on the leeward sides of islands free of moving floating ice. Females are faithful to their natal and breeding areas and frequently reuse the same nest site. The eider duck lines its nests with a dense layer of down that the female plucks from her chest. It has been found that the further north the nest is, the more down it contains, which once the breeding season is over is collected to fill quilts and other warm clothing. Common eiders are known to be seasonally monogamous, and in some populations show long-term pair bonds, while in other populations, they do not. The common ringed plover is a wading bird that lives along coast on sandbanks and mudflats, estuaries, and occasionally, rivers, lakes, lagoons, salt marshes, short grassland flooded fields, and also occurs on tundra where it feeds on all kinds of invertebrates. The dunlin is the most common species of the small sandpipers in Europe and one of the most abundant waders in the Holarctic. Like most waders in summer, it has more showy plumage, highlighting a large, very characteristic black ventral patch that contrasts with the white of the flanks, and a brown back with black feathers in the center. The bill is relatively long, black, and slightly curved downwards. Clams, worms, insect larvae, and amphipods figure prominently in the diet of this species. The purple sandpiper is a medium-sized, portly sandpiper has the most northerly distribution of all shorebirds in winter, occurring in small groups along exposed, rocky seacoasts of the North Atlantic. The diet of this species varies from marine mollusks and other invertebrates in winter to insects, marine and terrestrial, and seeds in summer. The snow bunting is the only passerine bird with a regular and abundant presence in Svalbard, where males arrive as early as April, sometimes enduring very adverse climatic conditions, which compete for the best territories in which to build their nests, which they usually place in rock cavities. Females arrive 4 to 6 weeks later, when the days are milder and the snow begins to melt. The rock ptarmigan is the only terrestrial bird capable of withstanding the harsh conditions of cold and darkness of the Arctic winter, and for this reason it is the only bird that we can find in Svalbard that remains its entire existence in this tundra habitat. Perhaps it is for this reason that it always lives in places with little or no human presence, that it is a bird that is not shy at all and easy to observe at close range if one knows how to locate them, since, especially the female during the summer reproductive season, has a cryptic plumage that completely camouflages it. This is because the rock ptarmigan's nests are located in the open terrain of the tundra, completely exposed to the vision of its main predator, the Arctic fox. If the bird detects the predator before it does and remains motionless in the nest, the camouflage works perfectly and the Arctic fox can pass by without seeing it. On the other hand, the territorial male makes himself very visible by showing a red caruncle over each eye in the spring with a generally gray-brown plumage. In winter both the male and the female wear immaculate white plumage, also for the same need for camouflage. The Arctic fox, along with the rock ptarmigan, the reindeer and the polar bear, is one of the few animals that remain in Svalbard all year round, facing the rigors of the Arctic winter. In order to survive the low winter temperatures, it changes its coat, going from a short brown-grayish coat in the summer to a denser and longer white coat in the winter. It is smaller than others of its kind and also has smaller ears. Its geographical distribution is practically the same as that of the rock ptarmigan, from Alaska to northern Siberia, through northern Canada, Greenland, and northern Norway, including Iceland and Svalbard. But unlike the rock ptarmigan, in winter it moves over the pack ice in search of carrion abandoned by polar bears, and in summer it feeds on birds and carrion that it finds on land. The Arctic tern is the bird that holds the world record for making the longest regular migration of any known animal, as it breeds during the northern hemisphere summer from the Arctic to Britain in Europe and to Cape Cod in Massachusetts in the United States of America, and when the summer ends, it migrates to Antarctica to enjoy a second summer when winter arrives in the northern hemisphere. In total, it is almost 40,000 kilometers of travel per year, between the outbound and return journey. To this amount must be added the daily movements in search of food when it is already established in the nesting points in the northern hemisphere and summer wintering in Antarctica. They are medium-sized birds, graceful in appearance, they feed on fish and small invertebrates, and are birds of great longevity, many reaching 20 years. The dovahkiy, also known as the little auk, is the smallest and most abundant alcid in the North Atlantic, requirements during chick rearing, and is the only Atlantic seabird to prey mostly in copepods, a small species of crustacean and other invertebrates, as well as fish that it catches while swimming underwater. It breeds predominantly in high Arctic regions like Svalbard, more than 10,000 pairs, and Greenland in large colonies. On rocky coasts, they lay a single blue egg that is incubated by both parents for 24 days and in winter disperses southwards. Parasitic Jaegers are well named for their habit of forcing other seabirds to disgorge their food, which the Jaeger deftly swoop down to retrieve. However, in most of their circumpolar breeding range, including the Svalbard Islands, kleptoparasitism is not the primary means of obtaining food, as they defend large territories across the tundra where they hunt birds and their eggs. After the summer, they begin their migration to their wintering areas in the southern hemisphere around the coasts of South America, southern Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, and it is in these open sea areas where they exclusively feed, developing their acrobatic flight skills to steal the fish that other seabirds have caught. The glaucous gull is a large, pale gull of the northern hemisphere, is a generalist species with a diversified diet that includes marine and freshwater fish and invertebrates, bird eggs and chicks, small mammals, berries, and carrion. The glaucous gull is monogamous, and each pair can raise up to 3 young in a season. The great skua has a very different appearance from the rest of the stercorariids, as it is a dark, massive and compact bird that uses its power to snatch fish from seabirds, while other species of stercorariids rely more on their acrobatic ability to achieve this. During the breeding season, by remaining on dry land and often near breeding colonies of other seabirds, it diversifies its diet by capturing eggs and chicks of other birds, or feeding on dead adult individuals. The Svalbard reindeer is the smallest subspecies of reindeer, adapted to the poorer vegetation and harsher climate of Svalbard, but also to the lack of competitors and the lack of its main predator in other areas of its distribution, the wolf. It has shorter legs, does not migrate and does not form large herds.